and we are on chapter 4 of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I'll start with my aha. You know, what was interesting to me was I didn't realize that the United States was an income tax-free society until after the 1900s. That was crazy. So prior to like 1905, I think he said, there was no income tax. How awesome was that? Wow. That was my aha. There's a lot of other ahas, but I was actually pretty surprised by that one. I guess I just assumed, we know what that is. I just assumed that all peoples were taxed like from the 1500s, I guess. I don't know what I was thinking about it. I guess I just made an assumption. You know, the thing that I'm finding really cool about this book, I don't know about you, maybe I'm the only one, but I'm thinking, man, if I had just read this book and got taught this book in school, think about the people that you know that struggle financially, and they may have high incomes. Do we know a lot of people that have really high incomes and struggle to pay the bills month to month? The thing, we all fall in that trap. And I'm going to tell you, in my own home, there are no better spenders in the house than my husband and I. It's a dangerous situation. You know, usually you have one that wants to save and one that wants to spend. But man, he and I, we have no self-control. It's like, oh yeah, we can justify it, right? And so, you know, changing our thinking around this has been huge. And so thank you for that, Lou, because we all fall in that trap. We all do. We all do. You know, and I'm reminded in the book, do you remember in the book where they were, Robert and Mike had to go sit with the rich dad and just sit there and be quiet. Remember that? They weren't getting paid anything. They were working for free. And they just had to sit there and be quiet and listen to him. And then they started wanting what the dad had. And what he was teaching them is self-control and self-discipline. Because later in this chapter of chapter 4, Robert goes in to talk about how he became the #1 salesperson at Xerox. You remember that part of the story? The #1 salesperson in Xerox. You know what motivated him to be the #1 salesperson at Xerox, Diane?
The more he sold, the more copiers he sold, the more he could invest into building his empire and his corporation.
That's exactly right. That became his big why. This has just been awesome for me. I can tell you awesome for me and my family. I don't know how much my husband is crazy about it because our Friday night dates are now this book. He's so excited. He's so excited. You know, but we're going to sit on the back porch and we're going to listen to Robert Kiyosaki and we're going to talk about each chapter together and talk about how we feel about it. Because if we're not on the same page with the person that we do life with, does this work? No. So if you're the only one getting the education, I love it that Amanda's also bringing her children along for the journey. That way, when she tells them no, they can't have something, they understand why. Smart mama. The freedom number is the first thing. So how much money do I need coming in every month passively that pays all of my bills and expenses? And that includes living expenses, food, travel, that's everything. That's your expenses, right? That pays my expenses. Once you hit that freedom number, then you move, once you hit that freedom number, then you're wealthy, okay? You become wealthy at that point because you have enough passive income coming in to pay your expenses every month. Once you hit wealthy, you begin to work on rich. See, the thing about the American dream is it's available to everyone. And yet, so many of us are educated differently that it's not. We're raised in scarcity. And our parents didn't mean to do it to us, but they were raised in scarcity. And their parents were raised in scarcity. But once we understand that this is available to the poorest person. And trust me, here's the beauty of it, is that when someone lives in a really nice house and has a really nice job, here's the change you have to make in your mind. But they have no income left over after they pay their expenses. They are poor. They might live well or live in a nice house. They might, and I say we, right? We're just as poor because we have no money left over to do anything else with. And if we lost our jobs tomorrow, those folks would go under fast because they don't have the income to keep up with where they are. So poor is not external. Poor is not external. You might look poor or you might look wealthy, and neither could be true. Can we agree on that? Neither could be true. So when we read this book, we are learning to move ourselves out of poor and middle class and into wealth and rich. Okay, so let's talk. We've got a few minutes left here. We've got 8 minutes left, and I want to start going over a few things in this book that I think is really good for us to think about and to be able to talk to others about. Okay, so I love this on page 125. Robert Kiyosaki says, when we study the history of taxes, an interesting perspective emerges. As I said, the passage of taxes was only possible because the masses believed in the Robin Hood theory of economics. Take from the rich and give to everyone else. Here's the key. The problem was that the government's appetite for money was so great that taxes soon needed to be levied on the middle class, and from there, it kept trickling down. And yet the rich will never be taxed. More and more often, we see governments use the tax laws to provide incentives to business owners and investors to create jobs and housing. Why? Because the more jobs and housing they create, the more people can be taxed to feed the government. These incentives reduce the taxes of the rich. So the only place for the government to drive tax revenue is from the middle class. And so this is why Robert Kiyosaki, he says, look, taxes is the big bully, right? He says this on page 129. Rich Dad constantly reminded Mike and me that the biggest bully was not the boss or the supervisor, but the tax man. The tax man will always take more if you let him. He will always take more if you let him. So basically what I love about this chapter is it shifted my thinking that whenever there's a battle waged between the haves and the have-nots, and that's waged for hundreds of years, the laws are made, and those that are uninformed are the ones that get penalized, right? Does that make sense? Raise your hand if that makes sense. The ones that are uninformed are the ones that get penalized. Before we started reading this book, raise your hand if you were part of the uninformed. For the most part, right? Kind of, sort of, the most part, right? So when you understand the way the rich play the game, you can play it too. And that's by leveraging the tax code. Okay, so what I want to talk to you about, it's so funny because my husband and I have a friend. We have two friends. We have one friend that owns his own business, and we have one friend that doesn't, who works for companies, and the family's always worked for company, and some of the family works for the government. And I remember one day I heard that the guy who owns the company said to the guy who his friend who doesn't own the companies, he said, you know what? He said, the reason that you and I think about taxes and government differently is because you work for the man and I am the man. And that is true. That is true. And when you are the man, you do what? You mind your business. Write it down. When you are the man, you mind your business. And when you mind your business, you account for every dollar. And you ensure that that dollar is working for you. You're not working for it. You understand the difference? When you work for the man, you're minding your bills and you work for the money. It's a total different mindset. And it goes to, and it's so funny because I heard this statement a couple of years ago. And then when I read page 130, I was like, oh my gosh, this is why business owners who build wealth think differently, because it's exactly what Robert Kiyosaki just said. My highly educated dad always encouraged me to land a good job with a strong corporation. He spoke of the virtues of working your way up the corporate ladder. He didn't understand that by relying solely on a paycheck from a corporate employer, I would be a docile cow ready for milking. When I told my rich dad of my father's advice, he only chuckled. Why not own the ladder? Was all he said. Why not own the ladder? Okay, all right. So it's 8:57. And I want to set up tomorrow because it's going to really be more productive if you guys have an opportunity to focus on what we're going to talk about tomorrow so that we can have some dialogue around it. We're going to focus on pages 132 through 134. Okay, 132 through 134, we're going to really educate ourselves on these 4 different principles. And I've actually done some research and I'm going to share some things up here. And if you want to see what I have up here, it's because I want you guys to constantly see the income statement. Oh, shoot, tomorrow is Friday. We don't have it. Darn, Monday, you've got more time to read. We're meeting on Monday. That's right. We're not doing Limitless. We don't do Limitless on Friday. On Monday, 132 to 134. But I keep this up here because I want you guys to see this every single time we meet. This is the income statement and the balance sheet of the wealthy. So now that you know your freedom number, start journaling or documenting ways to build your asset column. Now remember, asset column is real estate, stocks, bonds, notes, and intellectual property. And my husband and I had a conversation about this, and I said, you know, we have a financial advisor that we send our dollars to. Certainly we do. And yeah, that's helping us for the future. But we have to start thinking about that differently. What are we going to put in the asset column so that it pays us monthly a dividend in real cash to offset our liabilities and our expenses? So that if one day my husband and I decide we never want to work again, our bills are covered. So this is the mind shift that has to happen. And guys, this particular chart, if you've got the Audible, you can download it. It's part of the PDF. If you don't have the download, it's on page 72 and 73. The cash flow person of a middle class, the cash flow of a rich person. And I love it what Kim Jones said. She was getting ready to spend all of her money on liabilities. And we need to focus here. And here's the beautiful thing about real estate is that you can set yourself up. You can set yourself up for a limited liability corporation. So an LLC, you can set yourself up for an S Corp. You can do a lot of different things so that in real estate, you can pay expenses with pre-tax dollars. And I'm not an accountant. I don't even want to go there because I have no idea what I'm talking about in terms of I tried to explain it to you. But there are a lot of really smart people that I surround myself with that this is how they avoid the tax man. Okay? So you want to have an accountant that you really trust to start having these conversations with. So the rich dad, I don't know if you remember, but in this book, the rich dad spent a lot of money on really good attorneys and really good accountants. But guess what? It wasn't as much money as he would have spent on taxes had he not had those really good accountants and those really good attorneys. So don't step over a nickel to pick up a dime. All right? Make sure that you have advisors that know what they're doing and they can tell you about this and teach it to you. Okay, you guys have an amazing weekend. Go make some money and invest it in these assets. All right, let's do it. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.